Number 21. Nirasya yata chitatma chakprasarva. What?
Chapter 5.
521. 421. 421. Fourth chapter, 21st verse. Nirasya yata chitatma chakprasarva parigraha sariram kevalam karma. Sariram kevalam karma. Kurvanapnoti kilbasam. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. So we repeat that. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence, perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A Krishna-conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna-conscious person is always dovetailed with the Supreme Desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna-conscious man maintains himself by his work, just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna-conscious person, fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He does not, therefore, become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. Nirasya yata chitatma chakvasarva parigraha sariram kevalam karma kurvanapnoti kilbasam. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. So this is a continuation of a description of a person who is transcendentally situated. And it requires a lot of very, let's say, deep thought to understand these verses. And most people hearing these verses would say that's probably impossible for me to emulate. But it's not impossible. It requires gradual training to come to the point where you can actually follow these things. And Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. One does not overnight become a pure devotee. But one can be situated in the position of a pure devotee by following the regulative principles and chanting Hare Krishna. But one is not completely pure until many years of practice in the position of a pure devotee. One time Prabhupada was asked about his disciples, if any of them had achieved perfection in Krishna consciousness. He said they're all perfect, but they are perfecting their perfectness. So that's exactly a correct description of what the devotees are doing. And there's another verse, 5:12, Yukta karma phalam tyakva santimapnoti naistikim ayukta kamakarena phale saktuni badyate. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. So, in purport, Prabhupada says the difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and who works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the result of an activity is explained as being one's functioning in the conception of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane, and they are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness, but one who is entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there is no existence besides Krishna as the platform of peace and fearfulness. So here we have, again, a wonderful explanation of the transcendental position of Krishna consciousness, and how when one becomes genuinely Krishna conscious, they become free of all dualities. Everyone is born into duality, overwhelmed by the by love and hate, or attachment and aversion, and they're put in delusion because of those dualities. In fact, it says, Ichadvesa samuttena tvandva mohena bharata sarvabhutani samohan sargiyanti parantapa. That is, O Skayana Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So, people are deluded by the desire to enjoy the material world, and they have become envious of Krishna. Because one is envious of Krishna, one comes to the material world, and then they become deluded by the desire to enjoy the material world. And Prabhupada says the real constitutional position of living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by the illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The material energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. Due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees who are not deluded or contaminated by desire and hate can understand that Lord Shri Krishna appears by his internal potencies, but those who are deluded by duality and ignorance think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is created by material energies. This is their misfortune, such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, etc., thinking, this is my wife, this is my house, I am the master of this house, I am the husband of this wife. These are the dualities of delusion. Those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, this is a very profound verse, and one needs to carefully think about it. The dualities of delusion. Now, in 512, Prabhupada says that in the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the result of an activity is explained as being one's functioning in the conception of duality. The conception of duality, the opposite of conception of duality, is the knowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Truth. So therefore, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanavam Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Savamhiti Samahatma Sadurlabha. So 719, one becomes free of all dualities, all materialistic dualities, by coming to the conclusion that Krishna, you are everything for me. That there's no other reality or life other than serving you. So, when one becomes attached to Krishna and surrenders to him, at that time, one can understand that Krishna's mercy is everything. And that Krishna is the cause of all causes, and that his material manifestation is not independent from him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness, and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva or Sri Krishna. Such a universal vision of Vasudeva precipitates one full surrender to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna as the highest goal. Such surrendered souls are very rare. So here we have a beautiful description of what it means to be free of duality. One, that is, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the ultimate goal of all self-realization. Spiritual realization. Okay, then number two, one becomes attached to Krishna and surrenders to him. And number three, one understands that Krishna's mercy is everything. Number four, realizes Krishna is the cause of all causes. And number five, the material manifestation is not independent of Krishna. And therefore sees everything in relation to Krishna. So then 7, Prabhupada says, such a universal vision of Krishna precipitates one's complete surrender to the Lord. That's the highest goal of life. So we have 7 points that illustrates what it means to be free of duality. And duality is what keeps people in the material world. It says that the cause of anxiety or the result of an activity is explained as being one's functioning in the conception of duality. That is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. So when people are troubled by duality, they cannot make the strong determination to serve Krishna. They are wavering in their determination to serve the Lord because of duality. And a devotee understands that everything that he sees is a product of Krishna's either spiritual or material energy. So therefore, there's no duality. Krishna is all good. And the devotee learns how to use everything in Krishna's service. So then the devotee becomes all good. Then there's no more attachment and hatred. Because the devotee's service can never be stopped. Everything belongs to Krishna. So if he offers everything that comes his way to Krishna and for Krishna's pleasure, then he has no attachment, no anxiety over the result, and he or she is happily engaged in devotional service. Okay, so these 4 verses, 421, 727, 512, and 719, are extremely important to explain cause of anxiety, entanglement of dualities in life, and how to become free of duality, and come to the universal vision of Krishna. And that is summarized in the famous verse. It's from the Sweta Parashad, but it's also the Purusha Sukta mantras that says, Sahasra Sirsu Purushaha, Sahasra Rakshar Sahasrapat, Sabumin Vishvato Vridva Tyatistad Dasangulam, Purusha Evidam Sarve, Yad Bhutam Yadcha Bhavyam, Utam Ritat Vasyasano Yad Anena Tirohati. That is, that Krishna is all that was and all that will be. He's the Lord of immortality, and he has thousands of heads and eyes and feet, etc. He is encompassing the whole universe. He still extends beyond it. And he is infinite. He is present also in every atom of the universe. So this is called the universal vision of Vasudeva. So when a devotee comes to these realizations, that is, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate goal of spiritual realization, and understand that Krishna's mercy is everything, realizes Krishna is the cause of all causes, the material manifestation is not independent of him, he sees everything in relation to Krishna, and with such a universal vision of Krishna, it precipitates one's complete surrender to Krishna as the highest goal of life. Okay. So then the next point that is important is that when one comes to this universal vision of Krishna and completely surrenders to the Lord, therefore the activities of the devotee come on the absolute plane. That is, he's no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. And therefore, he no longer has attachment to the result of his activity, because he offers the result to Krishna. That's the proof he's not attached. And therefore, there's no karmic reactions to his activities. One, therefore, is filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. However, a person who's working always with profit calculation in their mind for their sense gratification, they can never have this peace. And this is considered the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there's no existence independent of Krishna. And that is the platform of peace and fearlessness. So there's a lot of monumental points made in verse 512 in the purport, as well as verse 421, where a Krishna conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he's a part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. So this is an interesting point, because a lot of people who are immature in spiritual practice, they use the platitude, the Lord is acting through me. So when he's drinking a Johnny Walker or a Scotch or Burgundy wine, he said, this is the Lord's Leela. He's acting through me. And that, of course, is nonsense. There's no validity to those type of statements. He's acting through me. But there is definitely factual that when one acts only to please Krishna and follows the rules and regulations of spiritual life, and then, as Krishna told Arjuna, nimitta savyasachin, nimitta bhava savyasachin. So what does that mean? That means, O Arjuna, you act simply as an instrument of my will. So there is a platform where one can actually be an instrument of Krishna's will. Just like Arjuna, he wasn't an instrument of Krishna's will when he refused to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. At that point, he was acting on his own, independently, and not considering what pleases Krishna. But when he surrendered to Krishna, and he said, now I'm ready to do whatever you tell me to do, I'm a soul completely surrendered to you. At that point, he became an instrument of Krishna's will. So there's a difference between the person who said, oh, well, whatever I do, it's all his mercy. But yet he's doing nonsense. How can you say that it's Krishna's mercy? Right? breaking the regulative principles, and basically engaging in illicit activities. But when a person does factually follow Krishna's instructions as coming through the bona fide spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, at that point, he becomes an instrument. And so in 1133, Krishna tells Arjuna, let me just get that exact verse here. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. O Sabyasachi, you can be but an instrument in the fight of Kurukshetra. So Savyasachin refers to Arjuna, who can shoot arrows very expertly in the field. In other words, he's an expert warrior, capable of delivering arrows to kill his enemies. And Krishna says, just become an instrument, nimitta matram. This word is also significant. The whole world is moving according to the plan of the Supreme Personality Godhead. Foolish persons who do not have sufficient knowledge think that nature is moving without a plan, and all manifestations are but accidental formations. This is another one of the major misconceptions of modern society. We've been going through a list of them, and here's another one. People think that nature is acting randomly, and that there's no plan behind it. Well, what is the plan? This cosmic manifestation is a chance for the conditioned souls, meaning us, conditioned by lust, anger, greed, overwhelmed by dualities of attachment and hatred. It's a chance for us to go back to Godhead, back to home. That is, remediate our errant concepts and errant activities, and adjust ourselves to pleasing Krishna by our actions and thoughts. Then we have a chance to go back to Godhead, to eternal life. But however, as long as we maintain the domineering mentality, I want to be the owner and controller and the enjoyer, then we try to lord it over material nature, and we become conditioned by that very material nature. Condition means we come under the sway or under the influence of the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And that keeps us attached to material things, which obliges us to continually take birth in the material world and undergo the four travails of birth, old age, disease, and death. So as long as that domineering mentality exists, we try to lord it over material nature. We remain conditioned. But anyone who can understand the plan of the Supreme Lord and cultivate Krishna consciousness is most intelligent. The creation and destruction of the cosmic manifestation are under the superior guidance of God. Thus the battle of Kurukshetra was fought according to the plan of God, the plan of Krishna. Arjuna was refusing to fight, but he was told that he should fight in accordance with the desire of the Supreme Lord. Then he would be happy. If one is in full Krishna consciousness and his life is devoted to the Lord's transcendental service, his life becomes perfect. So here, these words are very simple. You don't have to be a rocket engineer to understand them, but yet they're extremely profound. And to understand these concepts requires a lot of self-purification. We can understand what it means, but to actually follow it and understand the deepest profundity of these words requires tremendous surrender and service and dedication on our part. So there is a plan behind material nature. Material nature is not acting randomly. It did not come about randomly or by accident, as the modern atheists and scientists would like to convince us. They're trying to convince us that we will put order to the material nature. We will perfect the imperfections of material nature. We will create self-sufficiency. But wait a minute. Material nature is already self-sufficient. What they're doing is interrupting the self-sufficiency with their greedy plans of exploitation. But yet they're claiming that we're going to create self-sufficient. You know, we're going to create the eternal self-propelling machine. This has been the dream. You know, a machine creates enough energy to keep itself going infinitely. Right. What's the name of that machine?
Nuclear fission. It's the one in the France.
Oh, that's another one. That's another. No. It's just a prototypical idea of a machine that creates enough energy to keep itself going infinitely.
In Sanskrit.
Huh?
Perpetual.
Yeah, perpetual what? Perpetual motion machine. Yes. Yeah, that's the name. A perpetual motion machine. This is the dream of every scientist, to create the perpetual motion machine. There are even devotees that tried to do it. There was one guru who since has left the movement. He was very, very successful guru and served Prabhupada in wonderful ways. But after Prabhupada's disappearance, it started going to his head. And he tried to create a perpetual motion machine in Sweden. Spent a lot of money trying to do it. And when they were experimenting with it, it cut off the fingers of one of the devotees, unfortunately. And then they realized that, you know, well, the whole idea was they were in Sweden, so they wanted to create a machine that would turn the weather of Sweden from a cold country to a tropical country. You know, I mean, people get crazy ideas, right? But one devotee who was, you know, working under him and doing all the experiments with these machines, it cut part of his hand off, right? And finally they gave it up. Well, they weren't succeeding anyway. You know, they kept saying, "Well, we're on the verge. We're on the verge," just like the scientists do. We're on the verge of finding something big. You know, and Google prints an article in the newspaper, and they say, "Well, we're going to solve the problem of death soon." Yeah, all nonsense, all ridiculous statements, no foundation to it, and it's like a blank check for the future. You know, another 10 years, we'll, like in 1968, when the Sputnik went up, and then after that, the United States also started their space exploration, and they claimed that they landed a man on the moon. At that time, they said, well, in 10 years, we'll have Pan Am flights to the moon on a regular basis, like we fly from New York to London. And already in New York, there are real estate agents that are mapping out the moon to sell real estate on the moon. All nonsensical statements. None of it was true. In 1975, 1978, 1980 came. There were no flights of Pan Am. Pan Am went bankrupt. It disappeared as an airline. Was bought up because it was the subject of some, I think it was the Palestinians blew up one or two of their planes, so they gave up. And whenever a company has a bad luck, they declare bankruptcy and they start another company with a different name. You know, it's the same company, but you know. So you see, all these things are just a bunch of fantasy ideas. But people are given what's called hope against hope. Hope against hope is, one hope is dashed in the trash can of history, and a new hope comes up to replace it. So then people get their hopes up again. And then that one is dashed, and then another new hope comes up. So it's hope against hope. That's the history of the illusory world. Okay, so we have covered a whole bunch of points here. And I think we will stop right now and pick up tomorrow, because I have to make a phone call.